In the early morning of the 28th of March, 1889, a man was on his way to the old Nilsson mill farm. He was on his way to meet up with the young wife of the late farmer's son, Hanna Johansdotter. Because he was neighbors with the small family in the mill farm, Hanna had asked him days prior to come and help her move, as she no longer wanted to live there. A decision he found very reasonable, a decision everyone who knew of her marriage found very understanding. And thus, the man happily said yes to helping her. But as he arrived at the old mill farm, Hanna was nowhere to be seen. Concerned, the man looked around, hoping to find Hanna somewhere dragging her luggage, until he reached the basement stairs. And when he looked down, he was shocked to find the very woman he was searching for. She was laying at the bottom of the basement stairs, motionless, the life long gone from her eyes. At first sight, her death was supposedly a tragic accident. However, the cause of death would later open a horrific can of worms and shock the whole country of Sweden to the core. So much so that years later, it would continue to be an influence on the country in books, plays, shows, and movies. This is the case of Yngsjömordet, or the Young Lake Murder. Welcome to Sweden, where lagom is best and people make any excuse to have a fika, which is a coffee and a bite of something sweet. There is no bad time for a fika, whether it is to happily catch up with a childhood friend, discuss work projects, or even share historical murder cases with each other. People might be most familiar with the city Stockholm, but this particular case takes place far away outside of Sweden's capital. During the 1860s, in the small coastal village known as Yngsjö in Skåne County, the miller Nils Nilsson and his wife Hanna Månsdotter had 3 children, but due to the food shortage in Sweden at the time, only their son Per survived. When Per was 21 years old, his father sadly passed away due to tuberculosis, leaving him and his mother Anna behind to take care of the farm. As time passed, rumors began to circulate the mother and son. Rumors that multiple farmhands and maids in the area would regularly claim to have witnessed. It was believed that there was an incestuous relationship between the two. Some people even speculated that it had in fact been going on since Per was very young. And now that the miller Nils had passed away, the rumors spread even more. 5 years later, after the death of the miller Nils, the rumors about Per and Anna continued to increase, while their finances decreased. In hopes of silencing the thoughts and talks, as well as help their money situation, Anna came up with an idea. It was time for Per to find a wife. However, finding a young woman in the area who was willing to marry Per would not be easy. Not that there was anything wrong with him. Most women regarded him as handsome, charming, and kind. The issue was that people were afraid of his mother. Anna was known as a very harsh and cold mother who had a tight grip on the very shy and timid Per. She was not kind to strangers either. In fact, she was described as a very, very mean woman. Going back in time, Hanna Månsdotter was born in December 1841 in the eel-fishing town Yngsjö. Her parents were small, humble farmers who raised her and her older brother Anders. It is said that Anna was very good in school, a very polite and obedient child. Years later, as a young woman, Anna met Nils Nilsson, a man 13 years her senior. He was a man of ambition who had long dreamed of owning his very own farm. For years and years, he worked hard to save up, and by the time the two met, Nils had finally succeeded in buying his proud little mill farm. And upon knowing this, Anna apparently believed that marrying Nils would make life easier for her, assuming that she would be financially secured and could take it easy. And so, they married. Life was good for the two of them in the beginning. Nils had his dream farm and a wife, and Anna had her financial security. But sadly, the mill farm would not be working out as well as they had hoped, due to the change of circumstances during the time period for the people of Sweden, where more and more people living in smaller towns and villages would leave for the bigger cities in hopes of greater opportunities. And thus, Nils and Anna would together work even harder to maintain the farm. During the marriage, Anna gave birth to 3 children, the first 2 being twins, daughter Karna and son Per. They were born on the 16th of February 1862. But Karna did not make it any more than a week and sadly passed away. 5 years later, after Anna gave birth to another son, named Nils after his father, he too would tragically pass away 6 months later. Time passed, and money still wasn't quite coming in through the mill farm, despite all of the hard work. The situation of the country just wasn't on their side, and it eventually became so bad that Nils had to take loans, leaving them not only low on money, but in debt. Poverty and hardships can change people in many ways. In Anna's case, though, poverty made her grow incredibly angry and bitter, especially considering her main reason for marrying Nils in the first place was supposedly for the potential comfortable life. It was said that Anna's very presence would make a room feel cold and tense. She was easy to anger and would argue constantly. Because of this, nobody in the small community of Yngsjö wanted to befriend or even talk to her. It was just impossible. Any interaction with her would leave the other person feeling incredibly uncomfortable. As a result of this, rumors began to spread about the family in the mill, or mainly about the mill farmer's wife, Anna, that she supposedly had a cold and selfish disposition, that she wanted everything in life to be made easy for her, so that she could live comfortably and without any worries. As Anna made herself an outcast, less and less people wanted to be around the farm, and as a result, she was left with no other company than that of her husband and son. However, when Nils fell sick, things would worsen for Anna even more. The nights were filled with painful and aggressive coughing, making Anna leave her husband alone in the bedroom to go sleep on the kitchen sofa instead. As time passed and the health worsened for Nils, Anna was forced to work alone on the farm with their son Per, who was growing up into becoming a friendly and polite young man who worked hard on the family farm. He would check on his father, keep his mother company and comfort her, all the while maintaining a good social life, as he was very much liked by the people of Yngsjö. Instead of being happy that her son was well liked and could possibly make good connections that would benefit the farm, Anna was filled with jealousy. She didn't like that Per was growing closer to other people. That would mean that he would be spending more and more time away from the farm and away from her. She would be forced to be alone with her sick husband, who she no longer had any hope for. One could think that such a situation would inspire change. After all, if there was not long left for her husband to live, Anna would need to change her attitude for survival, make connections, redeem herself to the people of Yngsjö, and hopefully open doors for opportunities. Though, instead, she grew even more angry and bitter. And on top of that, she grew desperate to not lose the one and only social and emotional comfort she had, her son Per. To prevent her son from leaving her, Anna ensured that more time was spent together, that their bond would be stronger than ever, making Per feel loved and cared for, ensuring that it was ingrained in his mind that she wanted nothing but the best intentions for him, even if that meant intimidating the people he spoke to, or chasing away any potential friends or partners, for, of course, she only meant well. Upon this change in the mother and son dynamic, more rumors began to be spread, and less people wanted to associate themselves with any of the family members who lived in the mill farm. Even if they liked Per, his mother Anna would always be there with her ice-cold presence. Because of this, Per was forced to spend more time with his mother. Blinded by her love, he saw no wrong in her actions, believing every single one of her words. He would not even complain if she would fight or chase anybody who spoke to him. He always stayed loyal to her. At some point, Anna felt herself seeking more than social and emotional comfort, while her husband was bedridden and losing more and more strength. Per was growing into a strong, tall, and handsome young man. And so, she moved from sleeping in the kitchen to her very own son's bed, who, naturally, welcomed her with open arms. While sleeping together, Anna wanted to supposedly be as close to her son as possible, holding each other as if they were lovers. And when Per was only 15 years old, right after his confirmation, as in officially leaving his childhood in the eyes of the church, Anna crossed the final moral boundary and pursued intimacy with him. Most likely, Anna was Per's first experience, which, when putting his age and relationship with her into context, it is sadly only natural that his love and loyalty to his mother became unconditional and was thus wrapped around her finger. This morbid secret continued until the year 1883, when Per was 21 years old. That is when his father, Nils, sadly passed away at the age of 55. Finally, the stressful coughing sounds were gone, and it was just the two of them, mother and son, left alone on the farm. The two of them would work hard on the farm during the days and then sleep together at night. While there were already rumors about their relationship before, since the death of Nils, the two grew even more careless as they had the farm all to themselves. This affirmed the suspicions of the Yngsjö people, and thus leading to the desperations of Anna to silence them by finding a wife for Per. But of course, with such outrageous rumors and the overall dislike and fear of Anna, who in their right mind would want to marry Per Nilsson? The answer to that was finding a woman who lived far away, someone who didn't have any connections in Yngsjö, someone who had not yet heard of the scandalous rumors of mother and son. This was proven to be more difficult than Anna had expected, as the scandalous story had apparently spread far out into other villages outside of Yngsjö. Though not giving up, the searching continued until finally, in the year 1888, when Per was 26 years old, he and Anna found a suitable woman. Around 30 kilometers down south, in a small village called Brösarp, lived 21-year-old Hanna Johansdotter. Hanna came from a well-off and respected family. She had multiple siblings, 4 brothers and a sister, and a loving mother and father. They were said to have been an overall close-knit family. When Hanna first met Per, she was a little hesitant, but then very quickly took a liking to him. She thought that he was good-looking and amazing with words. They regularly exchanged letters when Per would win her over with beautiful written texts about his undying love for her. Falling more and more in love with Per, Hanna eventually became curious to join him for a visit in Yngsjö, where he lived. There, she took a liking to the farm as well, believing it to be a good place to live and start a family. That is, until she met her soon-to-be mother-in-law, who very quickly gave Hanna an idea of what she would be dealing with if she did marry Per. Understandably, not wanting to be stuck with such a mean mother-in-law, Hanna was ready to call off the engagement and go back home to her family, where she already was very happy and content. However, thanks to his well-chosen words, Per was able to convince her into marrying him, claiming that he couldn't live without her and that he promised to treat her well and make her feel safe and cared for, and most importantly, that it was planned for his mother to move out right after the wedding. Unfortunately, these would be empty promises. In November 1888, the wedding of Per Nilsson and Hanna Johansdotter was held in the bride's parents' home in Brösarp. After it, though, it didn't take Hanna long to realize that her new life had become an absolute nightmare. As the newlywed couple took their first steps together in their home in Yngsjö as husband and wife, Hanna was surprised to see that her mother-in-law was still there. Despite the fact that Hanna had been informed that her mother-in-law was supposed to have moved out and in with her own mother as soon as possible. In fact, Anna herself had very early on excused herself from her son's wedding, claiming that she wanted to focus on packing and moving her things. And yet, there she stood, not seeming to be in a rush to leave whatsoever. Barely a month in, and Hanna was tormented every day with verbal and physical abuse by her horrible mother-in-law, who she was never protected from by her subdued husband, who showed no love or care for her whatsoever, leaving her to fend for herself and to shed tears all alone. Yet despite this, Hanna tried to stay positive, believing that everything would improve when Anna would eventually move out and leave her and her husband alone. I have roughly translated some parts of a letter Hanna had written to her parents that she managed to secretly sneak to one of her brothers when he had come by to visit. It shows just how miserable the poor woman was in her new home.
I beg you, Father, to let me have the money that she needs so that she can finally move out. Please help me, as I do not feel good with her around me. We can barely handle being together for less than 2 months. Per cannot comfort me. He just lies still while I cry. I have come into a dangerous predicament. If you knew how many thousands of tears I have shed on this paper. I cry night and day, so I believe I just might cry myself to death.
Hanna's cries for help would eventually be answered by her father, who, with his financial help, finally managed to make the wicked mother-in-law move out and in with her own mother, 1 whole month after the wedding. Hanna's father also made sure to let Per know that he better treat his daughter right, or he would not be sending any money to help fund their farm. At last, Hanna was alone with her husband. Now they could finally focus on each other and grow as a couple, and perhaps think about children. But despite her mother-in-law finally being gone, Per never wanted to be intimate with Hanna, leaving her feeling cold and unloved as they slept side by side. Little did she know that there was one promise that Per was set on keeping, one that his mother had made sure that he never broke. She had made him promise that he would not be intimate with any other woman than her, his dear mother. And despite her moving, Anna refused to stay away from her son, claiming that she knew best and trying to convince that the newlywed couple needed her, when of course the real reason she was so insistent on remaining close was because of her extreme jealousy. In her mind, her son belonged to her and her alone. After all, the only reason Hanna was brought in to marry her son in the first place was to silence the rumors and help them financially. And so, Hanna was never able to experience any change, as despite not living there anymore, her mother-in-law came by so often to continue dictating around the farm that it was as if she had never left. Multiple people witnessed Hanna being mistreated by her mother-in-law. Anna would loudly insult Hanna whenever she could, pretty much over anything. Calling her a bad wife and a horrible cook barely scratched the surface of the horrendous bullying Hanna endured. Many of the Yngsjö people took pity on Hanna and would try to visit to comfort her, but would quickly be chased away by the mother-in-law, Anna. At some point, Anna had not only successfully ensured that Per made Hanna feel unloved, but he had also been convinced that it was Anna, his mother, who was being treated badly by his wife, and not the other way around. This resulted in him becoming colder than ever to his desperate wife, sometimes even joining in on the verbal abuse thrown at her by his mother. Luckily, it was not long before Hanna had finally had enough, and on the 27th of March, 1889, she had decided to confront her husband and mother-in-law, saying that she wanted to leave and move back in with her parents. The mother and son tried to sway her into staying, worried about losing their newly found financial stability. But Hanna was not convinced. She no longer felt any sorrow or hope for her relationship with Per. Because she knew. She finally knew about the scandalous relationship between her husband and his mother. How exactly she found out is unclear. Maybe she had caught on to the rumors and found that they were not unlikely. Or maybe, just maybe, she had been unfortunate to hear or even see them during the act. With this knowledge, Hanna was not afraid to leave Yngsjö, to leave the hell that was meant to be a loving marriage, to leave the wicked woman who had tormented her for so many months. She had a loving family who knew her worth. She would be welcomed with open arms and nurtured back to the confident, happy woman she once was. She had no reason to stay, and no reason to be ashamed of her choice to leave. For once, Hanna Johansdotter felt strong as she stood in front of Per and Anna, who continued to try and convince her into staying. Believing she had the upper hand, Hanna finally managed to stop the mother and son from harassing her. She did so by threatening them. She threatened that she would expose their secret relationship to everyone if they didn't let her leave. Sadly, this threat would turn out to be Hanna's biggest and last mistake. That night was meant to be the last one Hanna would be spending under the same roof as her husband, to which the very next day she was supposed to finally travel back home to her parents. But they would never see her again. During her sleep, Hanna was slowly approached before being strangled and mercilessly beaten in the head with a wooden stick. After that, she was dressed and thrown down the basement stairs in hopes of making it look like an accident. The very next day, a neighbor who had previously been asked by Hanna to help remove her things was on his way to the farm. He searched for the young woman, only to find her lifeless body. Despite Per and Anna claiming that Hanna had fallen to her death and that it was nothing more than a tragic accident, the clear strangle marks on Hanna's neck and injuries on her head were an obvious giveaway, and thus Per and his mother Anna were quickly taken into custody. The police made one crucial mistake though, one that would impact the whole trial process. They left Anna and Per in the same cell for a whole night, giving the mother and son lots and lots of time to discuss what to say to the authorities. And the story they decided to go with was having Per confess to committing the whole crime alone. But the court was not convinced, and neither were the people of Yngsjö, who strongly believed that the mastermind was Per's mother, Anna. As Hanna had been murdered during the middle of the night, it was questioned why then she was fully dressed and not in her nightwear. Per then confessed to himself dressing her, to which he was asked to prove it. This was done by giving him the same clothing Hanna wore, right there in the middle for everyone to see. He was instructed to button and tie it as if someone was to wear it, but he failed miserably, not knowing where anything belonged and how to tie anything correctly. Understanding that nobody was buying the confession of her son and simply making a fool of himself, as well as her, Anna finally confessed to helping her son out, and that she was the one who had dressed Hanna's lifeless body and helped carry it to the basement stairs. But she had nothing to do with the murder itself. During the retrial, the mother and son were asked why. Why did they want to murder Hanna Johansdotter? Anna's answer to this was that she couldn't take seeing her son in a relationship. She couldn't take seeing him being happy with another woman. Per defended his mother, claiming that he believed his mother was not treated in the way she deserved by his wife. Again, believing that his mother could do nothing wrong, that she would always only be having the best intentions for him. And so, Hanna Månsdotter and Per Nilsson were sentenced to death by beheading. Interestingly though, very many people came forward and begged for mercy for Per. All of them claimed that Per never once had been a bad person, that he had always been kind and considerate since childhood, always defending the weak and helping when he could, but his mother Anna had poisoned him, that she had groomed him and misled him for so many years, and thus he didn't know any better. One of the people that came forward was Per's uncle, Anna's very own brother. He claimed that his nephew's crime was a difficult situation, and due to the extenuating circumstances, he couldn't be sentenced equal to Anna, who nobody defended. And so, Per was pardoned to life imprisonment instead, and sent to Långholmen prison in Stockholm the very next day. One would think that, as a mother, you would be happy that your child is saved from death. But not Anna. The moment she was informed about the verdict, she was absolutely furious. She screamed and yelled, demanding why her son was pardoned and not her, over and over again. Anna sat alone in Kristianstad prison, awaiting her doom. The priest who was sent to prepare her for the afterlife described his interactions with her as uncomfortable. She would never interact with him. Instead, she would sit in silence and stare at him with a cold stare throughout the whole visit. On the 7th of August, 1890, 49-year-old Anna was led forward and out of her cell in a white dress, and outside into the prison yard where the executioner waited with a large axe. The executioner was Anders Gustav Dahlman. If you have watched my previous video about Philip Nordlund, then you will know that Anders was the executioner for him too. However, Anna was his very first. Hanna Månsdotter was said to have been filled with anxiety and had to be roughly pushed forward into position. Even in her final moments, when encouraged by the priest to pray and ask for the Lord's forgiveness, she ignored him. Young and inexperienced, the executioner Anders Dahlman lifted the axe and tried to aim correctly. However, when he swung down, he realized that his aim was off. Instead of taking Anna's head off clean from the neck, parts of her lower jaw and chin remained. And that is how Hanna Månsdotter lost her life. Little did anybody know at the time that she was also Sweden's last woman to be executed. In 1913, on Christmas Eve, a middle-aged Per Nilsson was released from prison after serving 20 years. He traveled back down to Skåne County in hopes of restarting his life. There, to his surprise, he was received by the people of Yngsjö with open arms. They welcomed him back with amazing understanding and empathy, despite what he and his mother had been sentenced for. While there, Per was said to have visited his dead wife's grave multiple times a week. There, he would sit in silence. It is speculated that he most likely was feeling remorseful and perhaps determined to make up for what he had done. Per attended church regularly, where he would play the organ and sing his heart out. It was said that he had a beautiful voice that carried immense emotion. People looked forward to hearing him play and sing. Per would go on to befriend various people, living the life he was unable to in his youth. Sadly though, like Per's father Nils, he too would eventually fall ill in the lungs. As a result, his life as a free man was cut short when he died in Kristianstads hospital 5 years later in 1918. It should be noted that to this day, nobody really knows how exactly the crime was committed or who the main culprit was. Some believe that it was both the mother and son, while the majority in later years speculate that Anna committed the crime all by herself. To this day, the case of Yngsjömordet has been retold multiple times in Swedish media and remains the biggest tragedy that occurred in the small area of Yngsjö. Such a complicated case where many people at the time and in the present look at it and very clearly see that Per was most certainly manipulated and groomed by his mother for a very long time. She was angry and lonely and therefore terrified of losing Per. She made him depend on her and believe that he needed nobody else. She made him obsessed with her. Hanna Johansdotter was tragically dragged into the mess, simply to keep the incestuous relationship a secret, as well as be their personal piggy bank. Hanna's grave, where Per used to sit, can still be found today in Brösarp, her hometown that she so desperately had been wanting to return. Her tombstone lies in Brösarp church. On it says, "In memory of the wife Hanna Johansdotter, murdered by her husband Per Nilsson and his mother in Yngsjö." The poor woman's tears and prayers moved them nothing at all. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel.